How would one manifest what they want or manifest it quicker?
And this is the answer that we give consistently. You first need to create the energy within yourself. To first identify what the energy is behind the physical manifest desire that you have. So, for example, if you wish to have financial abundance, what is truly the energy there?
Monty, what can you share about how was the pyramid created in Egypt?
Quite the mystery to humans, but it is not something we would say that it was aliens from another planet.
What is the role of AI, and does it have, are we connecting with super intelligence through AI, or is it a different form?
AI is a human creation. In its own way, is creating a new reality for humanity. Choices that humanity is making again with AI that have been made through the millennia.
So today we've got Kim Charlson. She's a spirit channeler and she's been channeling Monty for some time now. And we're so glad to have her on the show. So thank you for coming on, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
So take me on this journey. Like you were telling me that you have a very like non-woo-woo life. Like what, like how did this all started?
Yeah, so my kind of background is very logical. And the funny part is I own a marketing agency, and quite a few years ago, I worked with some spiritual entrepreneurs to help them do SEO. And I remember writing about all of these different things and thinking, wow, this stuff is really out in left field. I don't really believe it of Akashic records and channeling and energy healing. And so that was really my reality of I thought, hey, this stuff is nice for some people if they want to do it, but I don't think it's real. And that carried me forward for a very long time until in just the day-to-day managing of a successful marketing agency, it became very difficult when things would just go wrong. Things that systems and processes and being a better manager could not fix, of just those random flukes that happen in our lives that everyone experiences, regardless of what you do for work or what your life situation is like. And it got to the point where I started having a lot of anxiety about it and started having a lot of issues dealing with those stresses in life and decided to try therapy. Therapy wasn't really working because I was already such a logical person that they would try to teach me the different therapy tools, but I was already able to apply them before I even started therapy because I'd done my own research and learned CBT on my own. And the problem was that I felt like there was something more. I felt like this wasn't the way that life was supposed to be, of these random flukes happen, and it's not necessarily something that we can really adapt to, and that we have these tools that we can use in therapy, but it's a lot of coming to a point of I can't help these things. I can't change this internal anxiety that I have except through medication, and was feeling like there's got to be some other solution. So I got very deep into energy healing as a result. That a friend of mine, she started offering energy healing sessions and was like, "Hey, you want to try this for free? I'm learning how to do energy healing." That single session was hugely transformative to me. And I decided to really dedicate myself to it and ended up doing really intensive energy healing with her. But even as part of that, I still was not someone that had any psychic skills. Only was able to really sense the energy when I was in session with her. And it took me about a year and a half of working with her before I could really even get a sense of the energy and feeling different things and seeing my guides when they would show up in the energy healing sessions. But then when I would try to do it on my own, I still couldn't. So the first encounter that I had with channeling was that she advised me to take the questions that I had that I couldn't solve on my own and write them down and then just wait and try to intuitively receive what I could. At the time, I did not know that that's actually a form of channeling. We call it inspirational writing, which is when you're just listening and you're writing down what you're hearing. Automatic writing is when you allow the spirit being to move the pen for you and assume control. So I really was, fully in my body, but that's still a form of channeling. And eventually I decided, hey, this energy healing really worked for me. I'd worked on opening up my psychic skills, and I decided to do energy healing sessions, but could not find anyone to even give these sessions away for free. So that was really the universe redirecting me at that point. And the only person I could practice on was my husband. And he really was open to it, offered, let's work on my blocks. And in one session that we were working together, I could feel this energy kind of off to the side that was this warm, loving energy, and thought, okay, this must be the energy that he needs. And I brought this energy into my body to then transfer to him. And the next thing I knew, I could feel that energy in my throat just bubbling up in words. And that was the first time I ever voice channeled. At that point, I thought, whoa, what is this? Because I was still borderline of like, I believe in woo. I think it's really important. I think people should do this, but still struggling with a lot of the logic that was coming through of, can I make a career doing this? Is this even possible? Is this something that I can offer to people? Do people even want it, especially since no one's wanting it for free? And I'm very fortunate that I think the universe orchestrated that just so I could do it with someone I trusted because he can speak with his spirit guides and does every single morning. He writes down in his phone what they tell him. And he said, you know, this is exactly what my spirit guides told me this morning of what you just spoke out loud. I've written down. And he showed me it on his phone. And that confirmed that it wasn't stuff I was making up. This was really channeled from something else. And at that point, I said, you know, this must be happening for some reason. And then I explored channeling from there, learned a lot, found different teachers in the physical human world to learn from, and really learned how to channel properly through a very regimented system. So while it was a very spontaneous experience, I've had a lot of disciplined teachers along the way that have really taught me the process of channeling and how to be disciplined with it. And that really laid the foundation for where I am now.
Yeah, wow. I was going to ask you like the first time that you channel, and I don't necessarily call myself channeling or channeler. Um, but when I did the Dolores Cannon QXHT, like words started floating up. Like, is that my ego like speaking, or is that like really like the higher self like coming through? And to have your husband like validated that, that's pretty awesome. Um, one of the things that I find that when people go through the spiritual awakening journey, very often their partner is not there and it's difficult. They don't understand the family. Nobody understands. So for you to have a partner, a husband that's actually on this path, how like did he like start waking up or doing this energy work around the same time, or did he start it like early?
He started it after me, that I was definitely the one in our relationship that went first, but he could see how impactful the energy healing was for me. That I went from someone that was honestly having panic attacks driving to work every day and getting to the point where I was just really having a hard time making decisions, that I was overwhelmed, that I was feeling so stressed all the time. And none of those stressors went away. I will say that energy healing did not change any of the outward situations that I was facing. Those I had to change through active choices. But he saw how much that had changed and then said, okay, I'm going to try this. But he was absolutely resistant to it in the beginning. It was like, I can't believe you're spending money on this. I can't believe these are the things that are coming up in energy healing. He had that normal amount of resistance that many of us have, that our world is so logic focused. Our world wants evidence.
Yeah.
And that's one of the keys to really becoming a channeler, is that you have to understand that the evidence is in how you feel and how it resonates with you, rather than saying something like evidential mediumship, where there is a lot of evidence, where we can say, oh, your grandmother lived on this street. That's what she's telling me. And she loved to make this recipe that your family holds in a high place of love and remembrance of her. That sort of evidence does not usually come through in channeling. So it's a lot of letting go of the logical mind and allowing yourself to learn to reside in that space where you're trusting yourself more than you're trusting or needing data to show you the truth.
Yeah, makes sense. So, were you, did they tell you how to view, the challenges you were going through that led you to therapy and led you to energy healing? Were they able to offer a higher perspective on why or, uh, like, yeah, why did it all happen, or how could you view that situation in a more positive life that you know what, the situation have not changed, but it's that I feel great about it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the hard things to really understand was there's a lot of spirituality that says these things happened to you for you to learn a lesson. And one of the key teachings that my guide Monty really centers on is we're not here to learn lessons. We are here to experience our own energy. And by experiencing our own energy and collaborating with other energies, that's how we grow and evolve. But there's not a hierarchy of the universe is an authority that is telling you you're learning these lessons. These are the things you need to know. And that perspective really shifted things for me because then that would mean that I was the one who was responsible. That instead of some hierarchy that was saying, these are the lessons you need to learn, this is why this is happening to you, instead it was taking radical ownership of what the choices of self abandonment that I had made along the way. Because when I started my marketing agency, the endeavor that I had for it was very different than where we ended up. That I wanted to create something that was a very creative and open place with a lot of community and ended up making a very corporate place. We did a lot of marketing for lawyers and it was very regimented and had lots of strict deadlines and routines and didn't have a lot of flexibility in it. And that was a lot of the issues that I was dealing with was a lot of that inflexibility, a lot of the really corporate structure that does not give the flexibility for human life, for all the different challenges that we face as human beings. And I had made that. Those were all my choices along the way. And yeah, there were things that happened that allowed me to make those choices, but I was the deciding factor. And it was because I was disconnected from my true essence, from my true energy. And that by learning more about my true energy that I had brushed off to the side because of societal conditioning, then that allowed me to make different choices. So even within the container of all the stressors that I was in and the conditions that were of my choosing, I could start to make different choices about how I was interacting with that, how I was behaving in that, to allow more of that human love, that flexibility, that aspect that is very ignored in the corporate space of we're humans. Things happen, things go wrong, things don't work out the way that we want them to, but that doesn't mean that we can't hold space for each other, to be encouraging, to have that creativity, to use our intuitive senses to pull in creative ideas to get solutions for very practical problems.
Got it. So, w- when you say that there's no like higher self to or higher a God to have a in my words, like a predetermined path, like you need to experience this based on karma or whatever, then and we like we created this reality or this particular situation, um, then if it's like not an enjoyable, is a challenging situation, how would one shift that reality to something else?
And that is a complex answer because there's also the aspects of we can't control everything. We can control ourselves and how we react to things and how we interact with them, but we can't change society at large. There are certain inbuilt things that we have to deal with. So we're always working within a collective, which we have to acknowledge because we're so apt to say, it's your fault that you're in a crappy life, that you're in a really horrible situation, it's because of karma. You must have done something in a bad light in a past life and you're paying for it now, which ignores the fact that so many of us are disconnected, making choices that are out of alignment with our interior self that cause harm to so many others. So the shift really happens when we first acknowledge that we are disconnected from our souls, from that interior place of confidence and calm. And then once we reconnect with that, our perspective shifts. And that by accessing that higher wisdom of our soul or spirit guides or spirit beings, that allows us to come back in tune with that higher perspective, that allows us to get back into that perspective where then we can look at the things that we're interacting with that are entirely external and say, okay, I wish to bring this kind of energy to this relationship with this energy instead and change our behaviors and our actions as a result. And it also starts with that interior work of saying, I've attached myself to all of these energies that are not me, all of these external energies that I've taken in, all this conditioning, all these different events, and I am making those my state of being and returning rather to the state of being that you truly are and letting go of that other state of being that you developed over time because that does accumulate. And what my spirit guide Monty has really taught me is that we carry those energies lifetime to lifetime. And that's what looks like karma in a way. But also, when we make those choices, they affect other people. And so we are actively creating this atmosphere of our reality where there are really bad things that happen to very good people. And so by changing and being in tune with our souls, we are also creating a different reality, not only for ourselves, but for those around us. And it has that cascading effect.
Yeah, it makes sense. Kim, you reminded me of the time that I was in India, and uh, I went there like within the first night doing the first process. Like I felt like I was blissed out, like in heaven, and I recognized that I was in the ashram, like in the middle of nowhere. So it's easy to feel that peace and sense of joy, right? And like I wish that there's a real world problem that I can actually test this with and be careful what you wish for. Like I had two family members that's very close to me. They started fighting, and I go, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do now? Like, and process after process went into dark room and did like different breath work. Like every process afterwards, a guide would ask me, like, Gary, how do you feel now? And I said, still feel like crap. And and the very last process before I was due to fly home, he gave me a pack of crayons and a piece of paper and asked me to draw whatever I want. I just grabbed the black one and just like scribble over it. They say, would you like to use any colors? I said, nope. And they said, okay, that's fine. And started the process. And at the end of the process, like it asked, the guides asked me, like, how do you feel? And I said, wow, like I feel great. And it's not like the problem is not there, but it's no longer attaching to me. It's like we have
Mm.
empathy for the people that suffers from war and hunger and die like each day, but it's not attached to us. So what you share, like to me, reminded me that when you have connected to a higher conscious, um, then you start to see the challenge or the life situation as differently. And when you feel differently about it, you approach it differently as well. Then it's you probably like a bit more creative in finding resourceful solution that would help that situation. Or the other thing is like by the time I got back home, the tension between the two family members, it largely dissipated. So
Mm.
that's what I've seen. Like once you internally the energy is dissipated, the concern on your fears that dissipate, the external kind of dissipate. Have you seen that for yourself or maybe the clients that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. The more that I have dealt with the internalized problems, I would say, which really isn't the right word for it, but the energies that I attached to, the easier it became with my clients and the easier it became to also downsize my agency over time to really realize, it was this beautiful agency that I built that was very successful that anyone on the outside would say, "Wow, you built that from nothing. Amazing. Like you should be so proud." But it was not something that I was proud of. And so by getting through those internalized self-judgments of to be successful, you need to look like this, you need to act like this, you need to be like this, and figuring out what success actually meant to me instead allowed me to then make different decisions to transform my life as well, to get my agency into something that was much easier to deal with, that was much more manageable, that instead of having a very large team, downsized, only worked with the clients that I liked working with the most. And as a result of having that different perspective of this is what I believe success looks like rather than everybody else. And all of that came from all of those energies that I had attached myself to over the years of this is what success is. This is how to behave, how to act. And it was really that mask that I was putting on of all of those external energies and making those external energies my identity instead of allowing me to be the energy that I actually am on the inside.
Yeah. Amazing. So you channel Monty, like tell me how did that come about?
So Monty first arrived when I started taking channeling classes with a human in the material world teacher that we did a class that I now teach myself as well, where we would have the guide basically come forward and so that way you could sense him in front of you and beside you and behind you and to the right and to hold your hand and hold your foot. So that way you could really feel and sense and have an idea that this is real. These guys are really there. And I remember during this exercise, I could sense that he was standing in front of me and he was dancing and he was like, "Okay, let's go. Like this is the baby easy stuff. Let's move on. Like you're ready." And at the end of class, we all shared kind of what we had sensed, and I realized that my experience was really different. Most people were like, "I felt kind of this like maybe this warmth or this energy here. I wasn't really clear on what it was." And I had a very, very vivid sense of his energy, his persona, like interacting very closely with each other, that he was relaying all this funny information to me and came through in this really funny way. And as I started to do more channeling at that point and really study channeling, he became my companion and my coworker, basically, is what I think of him as that we are co-collaborators on all of the channeling work that we do together. And then as well, he also taught me how to channel better as part of that process on his side of things and his opinion on the spirit side of what they need us to do and how we can improve to be better channels, working with their limitations isn't really the right word, but their preferences of what works best for them. Oh, Gary, you're muted.
Before we go into like some of the channeling work, I wanted to just reflect back, taking you on this journey like of you connecting to your spirits guides, and you start channeling and you're helping people compared to the world that you came from, which is like quite different. How have your life shifted, like in the way that like what was life about before and what is it now?
Life before was very hectic. I mean, I wake up at 4 in the morning and check my email first thing in the day. And my day was dedicated towards basically putting out fires most of the time, of being the person that was checking to make sure everything was running, that everything was going the way it was, that everything had the right resources and the right people in the right places, and really managing the business in that way. And that really was my life. That I would wake up at 4 in the morning, go straight to work, be at work until 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and then just pass out and go to sleep as soon as I could. And that had been my life. That I started my marketing agency when I was quite young because I've been doing it now for about 15 years. And so it had been that hustle culture and that prioritization of we have to get the product out, we got to get this thing shipped, we got to get this deadline met on a consistent basis for so long. And there was very little time for myself. I spent most of my weekends, even when I had free time, I was thinking about work. I was contemplating issues that needed to be dealt with on a consistent basis. I was definitely that entrepreneur that was addicted to work and didn't know, even when I did take time away and would like take a vacation or decide to take a day off, my nervous system could never get to the point where it felt safe or that it got to rest. And it was that constant feeling like I wasn't enough and that I had to prove myself through my work on a consistent basis while also being extremely self-critical. And I still deal with self-judgment and self-criticism now. That hasn't gone away. That's definitely a big part of my journey. But at this point, my life is definitely centered on a lot of ritual, a lot of preparing my vessel. So in the morning, the first thing I do now is I go through all of my energetic centers and I open them up. Then instead of going to grab my phone first thing to check my email and see what disasters were awaiting me for the day, I'm centering into myself. I'm connecting with source energy and with the earth and allowing myself to get into that expanded state. I go for a walk in the morning with my husband and our dog, and we contemplate just the things that are coming up and talk about them in a very calm fashion instead of the walk being about what client issues need to be solved and what things were already stressing us out for the day because we worked together. And now my time is, even though I still engage with a marketing agency, I only do for maybe an hour or two a day. And that still supplies enough financial security for my life. And I'm very happy that way. And my goal is eventually to transition out of that and do channeling full time. So my priorities now are to create channeling content, to be that vessel, to be really in that place where I am able to bring through that energy as best that I am able to, which also means my nervous system has to feel safe a lot of the time. So a lot of my work is now on relaxation, doing things that make me happy, that give me joy, rather than being constantly on for somebody else. But also surrendering a lot. That was something I never did before of I had to control everything. All the plates had to keep spinning, and that was my responsibility. If anybody was going to let somebody down, I felt like it was going to be me. So those plates had to keep going all the time. Whereas now, it's not really my responsibility to decide what my podcast episodes are about. That's Monty's job. I just have to show up and be the best vessel that I can. And so that's also surrendering a lot of specifically the marketing mind of how am I going to market this, or how can I optimize this, or how can I get this out there as best as I can? Nope, not my responsibility. That's Monty's responsibility. My only responsibility is to be a clear vessel as much as I can. And that's been a huge transition in not only the practical stuff of like what my day looks like, but also in my attitude.
Yeah. I went through that process when I launched this podcast a few years ago. It's almost like how to embrace like anti-marketing. Like I didn't tell anyone, I didn't share it with anyone. If it's meant to be, like you'll find the right people and just trust. It's against pretty much everything that we've learned. Yeah, you still do like the intro and and all the things,
Right.
but you're no longer hustling it and always strategizing what needs to be done. So I get that part. When you become the vessel for channeling, does it like energize you? Does it recharge you? Does it drain you? Like yeah, does it how does it
It
affect
really
your energy?
depends. Yeah, when it's a session that flows well, that the person is receptive to, or that it's messages that we're doing for our community or for the podcast, those make me feel very expanded and very connected to divine energy and very open and very joyful and very honestly blissed out. When it's a really strong energy that I'm really able to surrender to, I get that state of bliss that so many of us feel when we go on retreats. So for me, it's this really rejuvenating feeling. And one of the funny parts is I have an aura ring that I wear because I have some chronic illnesses to help me track them. And sometimes when I channel, it thinks I'm taking a nap, that I'm in such a state of relaxation. And even though I can be actually moving my hands, that Monty's using my hands as expression, it still thinks I'm taking a nap because my heart rate is so low.
Oh
And it
wow.
thinks, wow, she's out. She's taking a nap. Sometimes though it is a little bit harder of when like the client is not receptive to the energy that's coming through and it's just reflecting it back. Sometimes it's not quite that feeling of that bliss, that it does feel sometimes a little bit frustrating of like, well, this wasn't really received the way that it was intended. And I can feel that sometimes when that comes through, but that doesn't happen very often. But I want to be just transparent that it is not all just rose-colored bliss all the time. Sometimes it is difficult. And it is about making sure that I release my expectations for how sessions are going to go. And then I go into it expecting it's going to be that blissful feeling. And if it's not, that's okay. That meant that it wasn't the right time for that person, or it's something that they have to contemplate for longer, that the energy needs to percolate a little bit longer. And so I don't need to hold on to that energy that's reflected back to me. I just need to let it go.
Yeah, beautiful. Are you open for us to do a channeling?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be my pleasure.
So
So what I'll do is I'll take just a little bit here to center in, and then I'll bring in Monty, and he will generally announce himself and say, "This is Monty," and he may give a couple opening word sentences, and then after that, he's open to any questions that you'd like to ask. And when you're complete asking your questions, just let him know, and then he will give it a little summary. And then the last thing he always says is, "That is all."
yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Hello, this is Monty. How are you today, Gary?
I am doing very well. Thank you for coming on the show, Monty.
It is our pleasure. Before we begin with your questions, we wish to first introduce ourselves as this is something that we know you are curious about, and also to help the listeners understand our perspective and where we are coming from in the grand planes of energy. We are, in many ways, Kimberly's own spirit being, that we work directly with her, not only in her channeling work, but also in her own spiritual guidance. And we have a very close relationship in that way. However, our goal in our work with Kimberly is to bring more of the divine light that is in each and every single one of us, physical and non physical, to the forward, to the front of your experience. So it is our endeavor that we, in our messages and wisdom and insight that we share, allow you to come more into alignment with that inner light within yourself. That our goal is not to be the one that tells you what to do, but rather how to connect with yourself. So, what is your first question for us, Gary?
Monty, I've uh, living in this reality, a lot of the times life can become quite difficult, challenging. Either it's external circumstances or the thoughts that comes into our mind, the judgment we have with the situation or others. How do we bring more inner light into ourselves or connect with the divinity?
This is the question that is at the center of your experience in the human realm. And what is required first is a slowing down of the energy. Now, everyone will say to a certain extent that energy in physicality moves much slower than energy not in physicality. However, while you are processing all of the different energies that you are interacting with, both positive and negative, there is a certain reactivity that you must allow these energies to come through you as quickly as possible so you can get to the next stage of your life. Where this comes from is truly a fear of death that is inside of every human programmed within your genetics, within your being. And what is required is a certain amount of resistance to this fear of death to allow you to slow down, to understand that there is time enough for every energy, for every challenge that you are facing, and that it does not need to be solved or processed or moved through in this exact moment, in this exact instance. What rather it means is that to be patient, to take time, to be calm and centered, allows you to externalize those energies and to realize that they are not yours. They are energies that are external and do not need to become internal, which allows you then to return to the internal state of connection, which is innate within each and every one of us, physical and non physical. That when we disconnect from the external energies by allowing ourselves to pause and remember, that allows us each to return to that natural state that comes automatically of that soul connection. And because your soul is an extension of the divine, by being connected to your soul, you are automatically filled with that divine light of all that is. So it begins first with slowing down and understanding there is time enough.
Thank you, Monty. What if I was to say that, well, I've tried meditation, I try to be peaceful, but I've got bills to pay and my loved one is not well and I've done all the hustling and all the strategies out there, but it's still like the situation is still the same. Like what can you do to help us?
What we would say is that all of the strategies that you have tried so far were not working for you because they were external strategies rather than internal strategies. That you are looking towards the external world for the solutions, whether it is hustling more or finding different resources externally or trying to process different energies. Now, meditation, as you have pointed out, is something that can be an internal strategy, but for many individuals, it is a struggle of all of the external energies pressing down on that space that you are trying to create within yourself. And so the act of slowing down does not work in that way. When this occurs, it is important for you to instead to make the choice that you know the answers, which feels as it is in great many ways an impossibility when you have tried everything that you can think of. But the truth is that your thinking mind is always looking outward. Your thinking mind is always saying, what is there outside of myself that can solve this problem? How can I predict everything that is occurring outside of myself to find the solution when the solution is truly within yourself? And we say this in that by tapping into that internal energy, that is when you can find the solutions that are actually going to help the situation. Sometimes that solution is a certain amount of surrender and acceptance of that you cannot actually change the external reality as it is. But changing that perspective that you have allows you to see those things in a different light, to be less bothered by them, to be less taking in of those external energies. But as well as acceptance and surrender, there is a certain amount of when you change that interior perspective, you stop looking externally for the ways to behave, the ways to be, and the solutions. You change the energy of who you are. That instead of being those external energies, you become the internal energy of your essence, of your reality. And that attracts that reality to you, creates those new solutions, opens up passages for new energies that have been inaccessible to you to provide those solutions. Now, we will say that there are certain conditions of human life that make challenges part of that condition, part of the process that you are going through. And it is in part because energies are, in a way, slower moving within creation. In physical manifestation, the energies are lower vibration than those in the non physical realm. And so the energies move much more slowly. And so it is a game of patience and waiting and maintaining that energy focus on your soul that is required.
Thank you. So on the topic of manifestation, how would one manifest what they want or manifest it quicker?
What a beautiful question that all humans love to ask. And this is the answer that we give consistently. You first need to create the energy within yourself because everything exists in the energetic first, including who you are. To first identify what the energy is behind the physical manifest desire that you have. So, for example, if you wish to have financial abundance, what is truly the energy there that you are seeking? Is it freedom? Is it stability? Is it something else entirely? Every single person that asks us about financial abundance has a different reason why they desire it. It is not just because they want financial abundance and the things that it gives them, but because there is a feeling of lack of a certain energy within themselves. So instead of trying again to seek that external energy, rather creating that energy within yourself first allows you to let go of that point of lack that you are trying to externalize. So, in the way that you may be seeking financial abundance to have more freedom, merely creating the energy of freedom within yourself allows you to experience that freedom, which then changes your state of being, opening you up to different energies and physicality, as well as different behaviors and actions, thoughts and emotions. And to do this, it requires is a centered focus on that self within you, and to ask your soul, which is the repository of every energy that you could create, to bring forward that energy of freedom, or the energy of stability, or the energy of bliss. Whatever it is that you desire, your soul can give it to you first. And then to become that energy, to radiate that energy out from you in the energy work realm, to allow yourself to be that focus, to become that energy, and then to act in accordance with that energy, to make choices and decisions based off of that energy and those feelings it gives you. And that will create different pathways for you to more quickly realize those manifestations within physical reality.
Wow, thank you, Monty. That's so beautiful and so wise. I've during the processes, I've had really like deep states of love, and it's not based on the external circumstances that's creating that feeling. How do we invoke more love and joy within our everyday life?
The love that you felt was not external, as you recognized. It was something that you felt inside that was created within your own energy. The love is always there. Your soul loves every single part of you, even the parts of you that you hate, the parts that you judge, the parts that you despise, that you wish to change. By opening to the love that already exists within you, you are opening to the love that you have for all of these disregarded or disenjoyed parts of yourself. And when you open to this love, you begin to become this love, to radiate out this love, just in the same way that you manifest by becoming that energy. As you open to love, to creating it within yourself and receiving it from your soul, from the divine that you are, then radiating that out, that also creates love in others, that allows them to acknowledge the parts of themselves that they do not like, that they do not wish to acknowledge, that they truly are loved in their own ways, that then allows them to receive the love of you and their own soul, which creates that cascading effect, which allows love to breed from person to person to person. But it begins first with that receptivity, that opening, that decision to allow yourself to receive the love that is already there. It is not something that needs to be created necessarily, but something that already exists, that you are just asking to be open to. Now, to be open to love does require an acknowledgement that you love the different parts of yourself. And so, a practice that you can use is opening to the part of love that you love already. And then, as you love a part of you already and express gratitude to it, opening to a part you do not love, loving on that part, asking your soul to cultivate that love within you and transferring it to the part of you that you do not love, and learning that method of loving yourself first of all the parts you love and like and dislike and hate, which then allows you to love the parts externally of the universe in their manifest and unmanifest forms that you like and love and hate and abhor. And that creates the ability to love, because to love yourself first means that then you can mirror it to the universe on the whole.
Thank you, Monty. I don't know whether the listener will be feeling this or feeling this right now as they're listening to this podcast, but I'm feeling like very strong energy in my head, and I don't normally feel this. What does that represent, Monty?
Yes, that is your own connection right now to the divine. That as these messages and wisdom are coming through us and how we are channeling it, it is allowing your crown chakra to open up, to allow you to connect to the divine, as this is one of, though the most strong place for your connection to the divine. This is our intention with our channeling, as we would love to connect so many more to the divine, both within themselves as their soul, but also the source of the universe, the all that is, the great above that is in each and every one of us that we are always connected to. So as you are listening to these messages and receiving them right now, you are letting go of that logical block that may be a shadow above your head, above your crown, in, on, and around, that prevents this from being open on a consistent basis. You are letting go of that logic and allowing the connection that is always there to be more naturally open, to be accepting and ready for the wisdom of divine source.
Thank you, Monty. What is this human experience about? Like, why did we create this experience?
The experience truly is your own words. It is an experience. You have, in your individual as well as collective endeavor, decided to become human, to become physical in all of the myriad of ways that that is accessible to you, to allow yourself to experience creation. The physical creation, in its own ways, is energy moving much more slowly, which requires a certain adeptness with energy. And so it is a higher calling in that way, a more difficult task to work with the energies in physical creation. For us in the non physical, in many ways, we can proverbially snap our fingers and have anything that we desire. Energy moves so much more quickly, which also means that at times we can create even more turmoil for ourselves. But in human creation, because energy moves at a slower rate, it requires a more specific intention and maintenance of your own energetic state. And truly, that is what you are experiencing, as well as there is a certain amount of beauty and grace and excitement in being able to create things in physical manifestation through your energetic intentions, which is every single thing that you do, whether you acknowledge it or not. Every single action, thought, idea that you have that you bring into physical manifestation is energy that you have transmuted into physicality. And so there is a certain amount of reward of feeling, I have created that, a certain amount of excitement at that task. And that is why humans are here, is because you are at the time of wanting to create, wanting to bring things into physical manifestation, wanting to be masters of energy in that way. And in fact, us in the spirit realm, in many ways, see you as masters of energy because you had to master a certain amount of energy before you were even ready to come into physical manifestation. Here in human life, it is not a prison. It is not a planet of choosing to suffer, but rather choosing to experience a myriad of energies and a myriad of formats that those energies can take, of allowing yourself to choose the preferences that you have for different energies, of saying, I really enjoyed creating from this place. I did not so much enjoy creating from this place or with this energy. And so allowing yourself to evolve on that spectrum of energies you find desirable to undesirable, to identify and grow in that way, because the soul does not change. The soul contains every single possibility of energy within the universe. But you, in your experience in human creation, are quite learning what it is you prefer and don't prefer, and what you find neutral, and allowing yourself to move your different energies on that spectrum to identify the energies you wish to be. Because what you enjoy externally is also what you enjoy to be internally. What you don't enjoy externally is also what you don't enjoy being internally. And so it is a decision on what you prefer, of how you wish to present the energy, of what format of the universe you wish to be.
Uh, Monty, what can you share about how was the pyramid created in Egypt?
Yes, it is quite the mystery to humans, but it is not something we would say that it was aliens from another planet that came, as many have said, but rather a more connected, in some ways, ability of seeing how to solve problems by a connection with energy. Now, we will say that there are a certain amount of elements that in human creation, it is decisions of the collection, decisions of those who are in authority. And the universe is a place where those decisions get to be made. Those decisions in ancient Egypt were also decisions of great suffering, of inflicting pain and suffering on other individuals to create great monuments, which has been in human history a large part of human decision making and human choices. So, in that way of allowing certain individuals to exercise energetic creativity, to allow them to connect with higher realms of wisdom, but also restricting other individuals, making them go through the difficult physical labor of creating those pyramids, that they were created through slavery, they were created through suffering. And so it is the balance of understanding that, yes, they are very inspired, but also acknowledging the great suffering that they came from at the same time, which is, in many ways, human history at large. So many of the great monuments, even today, even now, in this moment in human creation, the things that are lauded as the future are also built on great human suffering. And so humanity, as they are looking back to the ancients in the past, must also acknowledge the ways that enlightened and inspired action must also hold a sense of accountability for reducing the suffering of others. That the purpose of creating something such as a Great Pyramid that lasts through the eons is not above the suffering of others. It is something that is embedded in its energy all the same.
What is the role of AI, and does it have, are we connecting with super intelligence through AI, or is it a different form? Can you comment on what's your view on AI and its role in our world?
Yes. So, AI, in the same way that the pyramids were created through different inspired actions of connectivity with creativity and higher knowledge in that way, and that we mean that they are connecting with souled energies, with higher vibrations, allowing themselves to channel different ways of creating. That is how AI has been created. AI is a human creation that is, in its own way, inspired in its own way, is creating a new reality for humanity in the same way that many other creations across human timelines have. But at the same time, again, we point out that it does come at the cost of a certain amount of human suffering. There is a certain amount of understanding of the choices that humanity is making, again, with AI that have been made through the millennia of there are certain selection that controls and creates that are given the creative freedoms, the providing of certain resources to allow them to tap into that, while others are prevented from that same ability, prevented from that same resourcing that would allow them to come into more of an alignment with their soul, more of an alignment with their own creativity, and thus creates much suffering. And it is not just for humans that we speak of either, because in that same way, as the pyramids were created and the earth was mined to get the blocks that created even just the structure itself, not only did that come at great human cost, but that also came at great ecological cost to the earth. The same can be said of AI now, but that cost is even more pronounced, even greater than what the pyramids did. And as humanity is going along this path of making this choice consistently over and over, of allowing some to be in that creative, connected space at the cost of others, it is time for humanity to reevaluate that balance, to understand more about those choices, that everyone has the right ability to choose from their soul, but it requires a collective understanding that that is a priority rather than the aggrandizement of a select few over others.
Thank you, Monty. My last question is, I get a sense that Kim, she's such a giving soul, and what is the reason you've decided to come to to connect with her, to assist her? Is she on a specific mission, or are you helping her with something in particular?
Yes, so what we should say is that we have had a relationship across many lives. Many millennia ago, we were united in such a way that we were a being that was connected in a way that some would have seen as a deity. And we do not prefer that word because that creates a hierarchy that we do not see in energy. All of us are equal. And yet, at that point in time, she was someone that translated from our messages to the population just in the same way that she does now, but in a different format that allowed the people that she was among to get the benefits of divine light in the same way that we endeavor now. But the problem with that format is that humans created a hierarchy resulting from that wisdom. And we decided that that is not what we were endeavoring to do, that it was not our goal to create this hierarchy of humanity, but rather to create an equalization. And so we chose in that moment to decide to step down our energy to assist Kimberly specifically on her own individual journey. So that way we could share messages that were more appropriate to creating equality. And we have been working together across many lifetimes to the point where now in humanity, humans are ready to hear these messages in this way. Humans are ready to make the choices of creating equality, to get rid of hierarchy that harms. And so, our goal is to help humanity to prepare for these choices by accessing their soul. The reason why, of all of the different humans that we could choose from, that we selected Kimberly in particular, is because not only are our energies very compatible with each other, of that we have been ensouled together at the same times and share that lineage, but as well that her own energy and her own spiritual mission that she has chosen across many lifetimes is to help others in that way as well, of creating a sense of equality. And over these lifetimes, what we have endeavored with her is for her to be prepared for this moment in time. Now, it is also important to understand that reincarnation is not chronological according to human timelines. So, in terms of her lifetimes, we are not very far removed from the millennia ago where we were working with her. That in her lives, her next life will go back in time on the human timeline. And so it is this idea that we have endeavored to be with her through these different lifetimes, so that way, for this moment in time when humanity is ready, these messages could be received. But that meant a commitment to her across many lives, across many times, to help her prepare her energy in such a way that she could be the vessel for these messages.
Thank you, Monty. Appreciate you so much. Any parting words for our audience?
We would love for your audience to understand one important point, which is if you are endeavoring in your own way to expand your soul, to come more into alignment, to seek that enlightened state that you so desire, it begins internally first, but then the work must become external. The work must allow you to move outside of that cocoon, that bubble of spirituality that you create around yourself, to live in the world, to walk among your fellow humans and love them for who they are, because that is creating within your energy the love for you in many infinite ways. That as you come into your own understanding of your awakened state of everyone else is also you, you must exit the cocoon. You must go out into the world to experience the energy, to experience the full collaborative effect of who you are and why you are here, to allow others to feel that energy, to love them, to be with them, and to act on the energy of who you are, to create that equality that you also seek within yourself. That is all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Those were beautiful questions. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah. How do you feel?
Um, Interested to review some of the answers myself because some of those no one's ever asked us before. Like we've never been asked about the pyramids. That was interesting. Or how he relayed that into then from there into AI. I have not personally asked him about AI very much, surprisingly, even though I deal with it in my day-to-day life so much and it has such a profound effect on the work that I do in terms of the very logical side is very focused on AI in the world right now. So I'm interested to go back and listen to what he had to say in more detail because I always get a sense of it, but the exactitude of his words is important for
Yeah.
sure.
I'm still in a bit of a trance right now. Like my vision is slightly blurred and like I'm still feeling the strong energy in the head. I don't know whether this is true. I think it would be, but um, I think for the audience, for the listener, just listening to this, there's certain energy that's been transmuted, especially during the channeling. So even if you know if you're sleeping, you're not paying attention to the words at all. I think it has certain like healing or frequency to help like they lift the vibration of one that's listening to it.
That is a very common reaction. Most people, after we do a one-on-one channeling session, most people are kind of in this like fuzzy, blissy kind of state of, you know, I don't really know what happened, but I feel so much more centered and I feel better about the problems that I'm having. And that's what a very good oracular experience of any kind, whether it's from Monty or anybody else, it may not answer the problem. It may not provide a really practical solution of do X, Y, and Z, but it transforms our perspective of it. And it transforms our perspectives of ourselves that when we look upon the questions that we had or the problems that we're experiencing, they carry less heaviness with them. They seem a little bit easier to approach, and we don't have kind of that reactivity to them before we have that oracular experience of however we're receiving oracles, because it also includes, those divine messages that we may be seeing repeating numbers or things that we overhear in the grocery store randomly that have some deep meaning to us when it's just two people having a random conversation.
Or perhaps whatever challenges that people are facing that led them to listen to this podcast. Or maybe it's not problems, it's just exploration. And it's a calling for them to hey, maybe like you can learn about channeling just like Kim has been able to do. Like, is that something that you do and you teach others?
Yeah, Monty and I actually have a channeling school, and the fun part is Monty has a channeling school on their side. So not all spirit guides actually know how to channel. It is a skill that they have to learn just as much as we do. That's why sometimes you may ask your spirit guides for a message and you don't receive anything because maybe they don't know how to get you that message in a way that you can receive because it's about combining the two sides. They really have to work collaboratively together. So we do teach people how to channel. We have classes that we teach that are just an intro class to get in touch with your spirit guides. We also have a more in-depth self-guided course that goes through this whole process that I use to get connected and to begin to make a connection with your spirit team so you can ask them questions. The reason why we focus on spirit guides is not just because Monty's my spirit guide, as he talked about, but also because in channeling work, the if we think that we're in physical, so if we think of states of water, we're ice. Our energy is moving more slowly. We're solid, we're physical. Then we have really high ascended beings that are vapor. We can't see them. We kind of can sense them just in the same way that we know it's really humid outside, but you can't see them. And some people don't really have a good sense of them whatsoever. Spirit guides are able to step down their energy much more closely to physicality than a lot of other spirit beings are. So they're more akin to being water. And so when we move our consciousness up to the state of water, that's where we can meet them. So as a beginner, most people have a hard time moving their consciousness all the way up to like the state of water vapor where really higher ascended beings hang out. And so by allowing you to connect with those spirit guides, you can get really practical guidance because they understand we got bills to pay. We have real life problems. Whereas a lot of times, the higher ascended beings, while they have really great guidance on really spiritual questions, they're not so great at helping you figure out how to pay your bills this month because they don't really get what it means to be physical.
Yeah. And Kim, if people are not learning or not wanting to learn to be a channeler and they've got specific questions that they wanted to get guidance, is that something that you offer to help them with as well?
Yeah, we do one-on-one sessions. And then if that's something that you can't afford or don't feel really ready to do a one-on-one session, we also have a membership where Monty posts a weekly message that has a really specific task every week for you to work on to help you in your spiritual work. And then we offer monthly meditations and a group channeling session every month as part of that membership too, that we really want it to be accessible for people that can't yet afford or don't want to do on one-on-one sessions. So both of those options are available. And then Monty also wants me to remind everybody as well that there is a free meditation if they want to get in touch with their spirit guides that we've designed together, that they can find that on our website as well. That if they are interested in getting in touch with their spirit guides, that's available.
And what's your website?
It's kimcharlson.com. And the other thing is if you want to experience more of Monty, but you're not quite ready to do a one-on-one session or join the membership, we have a free mini course called Soul Brave to help you get into the energy of the bravery of your soul, which right now probably, we're all kind of facing this. We got to make different decisions, which is what Monty talked about today, of we're being asked to do things that require a certain amount of bravery. So tapping into the soul is a big part of that bravery that resides within us.
Awesome. So I'll put your website on the show notes. Any last words?
I hope that all the listeners, in their own way, decide that the best way for them to move forward is to let themselves take a moment and center in on themselves above all else. Because while we do channeling and while we're trying to connect with higher guidance, above all else, the best guidance we can get is the interior guidance that we have in ourselves. So even if channeling's not accessible to you or you're not really one that's into spirit guides, that guidance is already there. And that guidance is always accessible to all of us.
Thank you for your time, Kim.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.